So we begin today with not one, but two trade reports that could have the Timberwolves actually, and I do mean this, solve their major deficiency at point guard. Plus, I float a crazy idea for you at point guard as well. We're going to break down those reports and discuss what this all means for our Minnesota Timberwolves as we all move forward. Welcome back to the Timberwolves Digest. As always, North America, I'm Dave Dabbah, and I bring you daily Minnesota Timberwolves news, trade reports, trade rumors, and of course, a little bit of commentary, if you will, on the side. All right, I always say that this show is totally interactive, and I do read all of your comments, and the Timberwolves fans in North America have spoken. You do not, I'd say about 80% of you, do not want in any way to have anything to do with Ja Morant actually becoming part of the Minnesota Timberwolves Wolfpack. It's pretty clear as I was reading through all of the comments over the past couple days. New to the show, please go ahead and subscribe. The show is absolutely starting to grow really rapidly. Now, as you all know, I like to start every show out by asking you a question. And today's question is pretty simple. It's, should we actually trade for Coby White? I'm going to make a strong argument actually in favor of actually doing this deal. Now, over the past couple weeks, we've seen everything from James Harden to LaMelo Ball to I've got some ideas for you today about Trae Young, and then, of course, Ja Morant. And there's been some other point guards that we've talked about as well. But when we actually look at just how little money actually Coby White's actually making, a deal for Coby White, despite the fact that he is an unrestricted free agent next season, seems to actually make a lot of sense. We'll get into those details in just a little bit. I did want to also float this out because we will talk briefly, and I do mean this, briefly about Trae Young. I mean, he did have 11.6 assists per game last season, led the NBA. Of course, he comes with an enormous contract, and Chris Finch would probably have nightly nightmares about Trae Young's ability to not play defense. So that's one thing. We'll talk a little bit about Trae. And then, of course, there's the whole CP3 thing. There was a report which linked the Timberwolves to CP3 today. My personal opinions on that are not totally positive. We'll get into those in just a little bit. But it's not just about me. I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are on those topics. Now, we're going to go ahead and dive into the report that links the Minnesota Timberwolves to the Chicago Bulls and Coby White. I think for the Timberwolves to actually seriously consider making a move for Coby White does make a lot of sense. I'll get into some of the specifics around how much Coby's actually not making, and also talk about what an extraordinarily, if you will, discount deal it seems like you're getting for a guy who can average north of 20 points a night and could easily give you 5+ assists a night, and certainly would be somebody you would feel confident with actually running the show down the stretch. And no offense to Mike Conley, at least at this point, but Coby White is not skiing down the backside of Career Mountain at this point. Now, Evan Sidery, I always mispronounce Evan's name, writes for Forbes and does cover the NBA for them, has made this statement a little bit earlier in the day, which of course indicates that the Minnesota Timberwolves don't want to wait until December or until February to actually make a deal. We all know that on December 15th, our hope is that the Timberwolves will be making some sort of deal during the first couple days that they can actually go out and make a deal, because what's not working right now is so painfully obvious to even the most casual observers of the Timberwolves at this point. It is as clear as water is wet that the Timberwolves absolutely need a major upgrade at point guard. I don't really even need Forbes to actually start writing about it for me to actually know that that is one of the major problems with this team. Now, taking a look at Coby White, who certainly has some of the best hair in the NBA for sure, and just looking at like his salary, he signed a 3-year, $36 million deal, and this guy can average north of 20 points and can give you 5+ assists a game. And I think when you think of Coby White, you don't think of like a great 3-point shooter. And of course, that's not what we would be getting him for. We would be getting Coby White to actually be the general on the court, especially during the crunch time minutes, which of course the Timberwolves have done a terrible job against. I think at this point we are 2-9 against teams who are at 500 or have winning records. It is really clear, and half of those games we could have won, but we absolutely fell apart in the last 5 minutes of every single those games that we ended up losing. The Timberwolves clearly need a point guard, but making a deal for a big ticket point guard like a Trae Young, who of course would be awesome. Of course, he would cause Chris Finch to have nightmares because of his defensive inabilities. But going out and getting a player like Coby White, who's not terribly expensive, and we'll take a look at our actual roster in just a second, and you'll be able to see that the Timberwolves could certainly afford a deal to actually bring Coby White in. Super quick, CP3. I just had to say this because this report did come out about CP3 earlier in the day, and there were a lot of people in the Minnesota media talking about the potential of CP3 coming to Minnesota. I'm just going to say this. I'm a big fan of that not ever happening. CP3 was a great basketball player, but he is ready for retirement. He has basically nothing left in the tank at this point. CP3, from a leadership perspective, has always been good at leading by example, but certainly has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way throughout his career, both from the coaching staff perspective as well as his fellow players. CP3 is not the piece of chemistry that this Timberwolves team needs, at least in my opinion. Drop your comments in. I want to know what you think. Like, if you're going to bring a CP3 and you do it at the very end of the season, if you had some sort of like major issues and that was the only thing out that you could go get, but to do it this early in the season makes absolutely no sense. All right, super quick, taking a look at our Timberwolves roster. You can see basically from Rob Dillingham down, that's probably what it would take to actually get a deal done to bring Coby White to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I hate to see the Timberwolves give up on Terrence Shannon Jr. I think for those of you that follow the Timberwolves Digest, you know I'm a big fan of TJ, but if he's not going to get out of Chris Finch's doghouse, then maybe he can end up in a different situation where he actually has an opportunity to play. Go ahead, drop your comments in. I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are. Super quick, Trae Young. I don't think the Timberwolves are going to sniff this at all in any possible way. Trae just makes way too much money. The Timberwolves would have to give up way too much. But just from an on-the-court offensive performance, I'd love to actually see it, especially from his ability to actually distribute the ball nicely 10-plus times a game, which is what you could expect from a Trae Young. But it's just not worth the money, I think, at this point, which is the whole enigma with Trae Young. All right, go ahead and drop your comments in. Should we go ahead and do this? Should we make the big trade for Coby White? As you can probably tell, this is a deal I'm actually in favor of. Love to get your thoughts and opinions, North America. Go ahead and drop them in, as always, for the Timberwolves Digest. I'm Dave Dabbah, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.